Great, great evening, guys. Thank you so much for joining us again on another exciting Upgrade Mastery just for you with Mr. Upgrade. I'm Mr. Upgrade, and I'm super excited to have you join me here today on another exciting Upgrade Mastery just for you. We do this every Fridays from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. and we basically just get to relax, unwind, and share from our experiences of the week, like all the things we did during the week, the challenges we faced, how we were able to overcome them. Those are basically all the things that we get to do on the Upgrade Mastery just for you with Mr. Upgrade. So, how are you doing? How was your week? It's getting very, very close to Christmas. What are your plans? What did you do this week? Have you gotten your things you need for your Christmas? Are you traveling? What will you be doing for Christmas? Will you be at home or will you going to see your parents? What's it going to be like for you? Are you having friends or family members come over? What's your Christmas going to be like for you? This is like the weekend before Christmas, right? Because sometime this week, sometime next week, we're going to be doing Merry Christmas. I think by Wednesday next week, we'll be doing Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. So this is technically the last weekend before Christmas. What are your plans? What are the things that you have that you want to do, right? How do you intend to spend your Christmas? Would you be traveling? Would you be hanging out with friends? What will you be doing? Or will you be working during Christmas? What exactly would you be doing this Christmas? Yes, it's Christmas season, the season for giving, the season for gifting, the season to just be merry, right? Christ is the reason for the season. And like we always say, without Christ, Christmas is just another mass, right? Christ is the essence of Christmas. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today, I want to have a very interesting conversation today, and we hope that this conversation will really, really bless you. Yes, we hope it blesses you. We hope that it will cause a change in your life and in your thinking, right? Basically, we're going to talk about tell yourself the truth. One of the things that we've observed is that sometimes people don't like to tell themselves the truth. But there's a part of scripture that I'm going to use as the basis for this conversation. Now, it's that scripture that we already know, Luke chapter 15, the story of the lost, right? I like to call it the story of the lost because there are three things that got lost in that chapter. You have the story of the lost sheep, you have the story of the lost coin, and you have the story of the lost son. So technically, it's the chapter of the lost, and we're going to look at how telling yourself the truth highlights the essence of that chapter, right? We're going to take from the story of the shepherd, the story of the woman, and the story of the prodigal son to analyze this essence of tell yourself the truth. Are you here? So now that you're here, now that your friends are here, do well to invite someone to be here. Invite someone to be here so that you can not enjoy all of this alone, so that somebody else can be part of this conversation. Okay, so let's begin the conversation that we're going to have today. Right, this conversation, we're going to go straight to the book of Luke, chapter 15. There's something very interesting that I need you to see in that chapter of Luke 15. Right, I'm going to read out the story, and I hope that you would be able to follow through and enjoy it as we look at it together. Luke chapter 15. Now I'm going to be taking the story from the Living Bible, right? The Living Bible would help us with this conversation. Now, start from verse 1 because I'm going to take it to the end and then I will explain all the things I need to explain. Verse 1, Luke 15, right? Now, dishonest tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus' sermons. But this caused complaints from the Jewish religious leaders and the experts on Jewish laws because he was associating with such despicable people, even eating with them. So Jesus used this illustration. If you had 100 sheep, now this is the parable of the lost sheep. If you have 100 sheep and one of them strayed away and was lost in the wilderness, wouldn't you leave the 99 others to go and search for the lost one until you found it? And then you would joyfully carry it home on your shoulders. When you arrive, you would call together your friends and neighbors to rejoice with you because your lost sheep was found. You know, anytime we talk about lost sheep, everybody's mind just go to, so that you leave the 99, always for the one. Remember that song? Yeah, Omema. Now, this is the first introduction to this chapter of the lost, right? Where the shepherd, having 100 sheep, realized that one was missing, and then he goes after the one and leaves the 99 behind, right? I'm not going to focus on this story. There's still a lot to get out of this story. I'm not going to focus on this story. So let's move on to the next story, right? Follow me closely. Next story. Now, well, in the same way, heaven will be happier over one lost sinner who returns to God than over 99 others who haven't strayed away. Excuse me. Excuse me. It's the Hamatan season, so a minute, please. 1 minute. Okay, so let's continue the second story. Now, I'll take another illustration. A woman has 10 valuable silver coins and loses one. The first was 100 sheep, loses one. The second now is 10 valuable silver coins and loses one. Won't she light a lamp and look in every corner of the house and sweep every nook and cranny until she finds it? And then, won't she call in her friends and neighbors to rejoice with her? In the same way, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God when one sinner repents. And this is the second story, the lost coin. She takes a light, she takes a lamp, looks into every corner of her house, sweeps every nook and cranny till she finds it. All right. Now, this two story tells us about someone going in search for what is valuable to them. Right? The shepherd goes in search for the sheep. The woman goes in search for her coin. Right? Now, it goes to the last story, which I'm going to focus on today, on explaining to us why it is important to tell yourself the truth. Now, to further illustrate the point, he told them this story. A man had two sons. When the younger told his father, I want my share of your estate now, instead of waiting until you die. And that lets you know that people only get the inheritance after the death of the father, right? The son said, I want my share of your estate now, instead of waiting until you die. His father agreed to divide his wealth between his two sons. Take note, the father divided the wealth between the two sons. So he didn't just give the younger one and left the older one. He gave both of them. Right, but our focus is not on the older one for today. Our focus is on the younger one. Don't worry, another day I will tell you about the elder brother syndrome, which the other one had. Right, but not today. Today is to focus on tell yourself the truth, which the spotlight is on this younger one, this third story, and the younger brother. Now let's continue the story. Quite an interesting and fascinating story. And it says, a few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and took a trip to a distant land, and there wasted all his money on parties and prostitutes. Remember, we're using the Living Bible, so you may not see this on the King James Version. This is a newer version that gives it more explanation, right? Now, the younger son packed all of his belongings, took a trip to a distant land, and there wasted all his money on parties and prostitutes. Now, that gives us a clue of how he spent the inheritance he got from his father: parties and prostitutes. Now, that's also a clue that when you get resources and you spend it on those kind of things, it will deplete the resources. Spending on parties and prostitutes is not an investment, right? It is a liability. You know, I hear people say they will take a loan to throw a party. That's like the height of irresponsibility, right? You are taking money you don't have to impress people you don't like. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. And that's what this young man did. He took his inheritance, went to a far country. This is literally people who don't even know him. And he spent all. He spent literally all on parties and prostitutes. Now, guess what happens? Now, you know, when you keep spending without saving and investing, it's only a matter of time before you become broke. And that's what we see from this young man. He spent all on parties and prostitutes. I see what happened next to him. A very interesting and practical story. Now, it says, about the time his money was gone, now he had lost his money, there was a great famine that swept over the land, and he began to starve. Now, how do you go from having so much to having nothing? When you waste, that's what happens. Because it is said here that he wasted all his money on parties and prostitutes. Now, about the time his money was gone, now that he no longer had money, unfortunately, there was a national crisis. There was a famine that swept over the land, and he began to starve. Now, he persuaded a local farmer to hire him to feed his pigs. Now, he left from having enough, having more than enough, to throwing luxurious parties, to spending on prostitutes. He came down to the point where he was begging to be hired to feed pigs. Like, how do you go from here? How do you go from here to here? Like, how do you go from here, this high, to this low? From the one who was throwing lavish parties, the one who was spending on prostitutes, to the one now begging to be hired to feed pigs. See, you have no idea how low you can go when you decide to go so low. You have no idea. You have no idea. He spent on prostitutes. He spent on parties. Now he had no more money. He was in want. He was in debt. Not necessarily in debt. He was starving. And in order for him to not die of starvation, to be able to get something for himself, he went to meet a local farmer, asking to be hired, to be employed, to be able to feed pigs. Guess what? It didn't just get that bad. See what happens next. It says, the boy became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the swine looked good to him. Like, he's poor, he's feeding swine, and he's feeding from what he's giving to the swine. How does pig food become desirable for you? How low can it get? I know many of you have ever seen pigs or see where they rear pigs. Now imagine you having the desire to eat the pig's food because of how poor you had become. You know, when you don't when you look at this story from scripture, you just okay, it's just a story. No, no, no. Picture it. Go to where pigs are rare, where you rear pigs, where you train pigs. Now look at the food that they feed them. Now imagine yourself wanting to eat the food that they feed the pigs. That was how low this guy was. You can imagine somebody who they've been doing Dorime for in the club is now feeding with pig. Like, look at the contrast. It's as different from night and day. Somebody who was doing lavish parties, someone who was hanging out with prostitutes, now is hanging out with pigs and feeding from what he's expected to feed the pig with. It doesn't get worse than that. It doesn't get worse than that. Literally, it does not get worse than that. But that is where this young man found himself. And that is the whole essence of our story today. Tell yourself the truth. I love the next line, which is where we begin from in our conversation today, from verse 17. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself. Now, I'd like you to pause here and take a deep breath, because this is where the story begins. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, which means until you tell yourself the truth, you can't make the necessary change that needs to be made in your life. Now, this conversation is not one that we are going to be in a hurry about, right? We're going to take our time and really dwell on this conversation. See this, guys. Until you tell yourself the truth, you will never be able to make the necessary change that needs to be made in your life. See where this guy has been. From throwing lavish parties, from hanging out with prostitutes, to begging to be hired to feed pigs, and to eating the food he was supposed to feed the pigs with. He had come from here to here, like from up to down, down, down. But this is where the story gets interesting. He came to his senses. Now, where has his senses been all this while? Didn't he have his senses when he was asking for his inheritance? Didn't he have his senses when he took his inheritance and went to a far country? Didn't he have his senses when he started throwing lavish parties and spending it on prostitutes? Didn't he have his senses when he went to beg the local farmer so he can feed his swine? Didn't he have his senses when he was feeding from the food he's supposed to feed the swine with? What happened to his senses in all of this? I'll tell you what happened to his senses. You always lose your senses when you are not telling yourself the truth. That's what happened to his senses. You will always lose your sense when you are not telling yourself the truth. I know there are three simple things I realize that people do when they don't tell themselves the truth. Number one, they assume. So you could see that this young man assumed everything was still good when he was living a wasteful life on prostitutes, on parties, while he was wasting his inheritance. He assumed that they would never get exhausted. He assumed that it will never diminish, it will never deplete. He assumed that the resources will always be there. He assumed. That's what happens when people don't tell themselves the truth. They assume. They assume. The second thing that you discover when people don't tell themselves the truth is that they pretend. You see, going from being someone who has so much inheritance to someone who was now feeding with swine, that's the level to which somebody can pretend as though everything is still well. And I love the part that scripture says no one gave to him. So even when he was pretending, that's to show you that how much he pretended, because people felt he still had. So nobody could give somebody that has. I get it. Have you ever found yourself in that situation where you need something, but people already think you already have it? So they can't give you because they think you have it already. And the other people who pretend as though they have, and then that's make their helper walk away, because come on, how do you help somebody who already has help? You help somebody who needs help, not somebody who already has help. So this young man found a way to pretend as though everything was okay. He was fine. Even though he was not feeding with swine, he didn't see the bad thing in it. He still pretended as though all was well. The third thing you will notice for people who don't tell themselves the truth is that they deny. And this is even worse, because the worst form of deception is self-deception. How do you deny your reality? Like, how do you deny your reality? You see, your reality is your reality. How do you deny it? Like, okay, this is happening to you. You're feeding with swine. This is your reality right now. How do you deny this? That's because they chose to not tell themselves the truth. So, three simple things, like I said, for people who don't tell themselves the truth. Number one, they will assume. Like we always say, that assumption is the lowest level of knowledge. They assume. Number two, they pretend. They pretend as though all is well. It is not well. You should know when it is and when it's not. And obviously, when you tell yourself the truth, you would not pretend. Number three, they deny. They deny their reality. See, your reality is your reality. You're not imagining it. That's your reality. So don't deny it. Face it and deal with it. So when you don't tell yourself the truth, you suspend your sense. You suspend your sense and you are living in nonsense without common sense. That's what happens. You're living in nonsense without common sense because you suspend your sense. But the moment you decide to tell yourself the truth, guess what happens to you? See what the scripture says. When he finally came to his senses, you come to your senses when you tell yourself the truth. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home, even the hired men have food enough and to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired man. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long distance away, his father saw him coming and was filled with loving pity and ran and embraced him and kissed him. Now, let's get back to this. He came to his senses. You see, when you tell yourself the truth, there are three things that will happen. There are three things that will happen when you tell yourself the truth. Number one, you become honest to yourself. You're having honest conversation with yourself. You know, my friend Emmanuel, on his episode 149 on the podcast, Let's Talk Podcast with Emmanuel, he talked about honest conversation. You see, when you tell yourself the truth, you are having honest conversation with yourself. The first thing that happens when you tell yourself the truth is that you become honest. There's no need to hide. There's no need to pretend. There's no need to lie. You become honest with yourself. This is where I am now. This is my reality. Yes, I am out of cash. Yes, I am broke. Yes, I made wrong decisions. I am honest with myself. That's where it begins to tell yourself the truth. The first thing is to be honest. The second thing is to accept that yes, I'm not only honest, I accept where I am. I accept my mistake. I accept my wrong. I accept the role I played in getting myself to this point. Because you see, you cannot fix what you never accept. You can't fix it. So, in order for you to fix this, you need to first accept it. Yes, this is wrong. Yes, this is where I am. Yes, these are the mistakes I've made. You need to first accept it if ever at all you want to fix it. And the third thing is that you make changes. So it's not enough to feel sorry for yourself. Sorry is actually spelled change. If you are truly sorry, you will change. It's as simple as that. If you are truly sorry, you will change. It's not enough to say, oh, I'm sorry. No, 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 no. That won't cut it. You need to actually change. So these are the three things that happen when you tell yourself the truth. Number one, you're honest with yourself. Number two, you accept where you are. There's no point lying to yourself. There's no point trying to embellish or try to make it light. No, no, no. You accept where you are at this point. And number three, you make the changes. This is how you tell yourself the truth. And this is what this young man did. He said, the hired servants in my father's house have enough to eat and to spare. Him being honest. Right? He says that, yeah, I am dying of hunger. He has accepted where he was. And then he says, I would arise and go back to my father and tell him I'm no longer worthy to be called his son. He should make me one of his hired servants. And the next chapter, the next verse says, and he went back home, make changes. So you see, in these few verses, we could see how he changed his life from what it is currently to what it became when he got home. Simply because he told himself the truth. See, I don't know where you are in your journey. I don't know the things that you have been through. But one thing I can guarantee you is this: if you really want to make a change or a difference in your life, it starts from you telling yourself the truth. See, you can lie to the whole world. You can lie to everyone, but you should not lie to yourself. You should not lie to yourself. Of what use is it lying to yourself? Literally, of what use is it that you're lying to yourself? It's of no use to lie to yourself. It's of no use. And the reason why you will be comfortable to lie to yourself is because you don't tell yourself the truth. Because if you tell yourself the truth, why should you lie? So I've told us three things that happen when people don't tell themselves the truth. They will assume, they will pretend, and they will deny. These are the things you will notice for people who don't tell themselves the truth. They will assume, they will pretend, they will deny, because they don't want to tell themselves the truth. That's what they will do. And that's what they will keep doing because they don't want to tell themselves the truth. And this is what the prodigal son also did. He wasted his money on parties, on prostitutes, and he began to be in want. No one gave to him. He went to beg to be hired as somebody who was feeding swine. But then he came to his senses, which is the whole essence of this conversation. He came to his senses and said, I will arise and go back to my father. Because in my father's house, the servants have enough to eat and to spare. So why do I stay here and suffer in hunger? And then he arose and went back home. I told us 3 things that happen for you when you tell yourself the truth. Number 1, you're honest. Number 2, you accept. And number 3, you make changes. And this is what the young man did. He accepted his reality. He was honest with himself. And then he made the necessary changes. And you know how his story ended. Right? So I'll just read it out for us so we can follow. Because I said I was going to read the whole chapter, so I'll keep to that. His son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and you, and I'm not worthy of being called your son. But his father said to the slaves, Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him, and a jeweled ring for his finger and shoes, and kill the calf we have in the fattening pen. We must celebrate with a feast, for this son of mine was dead and has returned to life. He was lost and is found. So the party began. So you see, in every of the story, there was a party. Heaven rejoices in every of the story. When the shepherd found the lost sheep, there was a party. When the woman found her lost coin, there was a party. When the father received his son back, there was a party. Now, look at the elder brother syndrome. That's another day conversation, but let me just read it out. Meanwhile, the older brother was in the field working. When he returned home, he heard dance music coming from the house, and he asked one of the servants, what was going on? Your brother is back, he was told, and your father had killed the calf we were fattening and has prepared a great feast to celebrate his coming home again unharmed. The older brother was angry and wouldn't go in. His father came out and begged him. But he replied, all these years I've worked hard for you and never once refused to do a single thing you told me to. And in all that time, you have never gave me one young goat, baby goat, for a feast with my friends. Yet, when this son of yours comes back after spending your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the finest calf we have on the place. Look, dear son, his father said to him, you and I are very close, and everything I have is yours. But it is right to celebrate, for he is your brother, and he was dead, and he has come back to life. He was lost and is found. Don't worry, another day I will tell us about the elder brother syndrome, right? But not today. But you could see from this whole story that things changed for this young man only when he was willing to tell himself the truth. Why am I saying this to us today? You would remain the way you've always been until you tell yourself the truth. I'll say that again. You're going to remain the way you have always been until you tell yourself the truth. So, if you are okay the way you are, that's fine. But if you know that you are not okay with the way you are, then it's time to tell yourself the truth. Because you cannot make changes while you are lying to yourself. You can't. You can't make changes while you are lying to yourself. Honesty is the best policy, not just for situations, also for your life. You have to be honest with yourself. Now, we're getting towards the end of the year, and this is the point where it's only wise to review your year. And in reviewing your year, that is one way of you telling yourself the truth in the year. That's one way for you telling yourself the truth. And how do you do that? You need to ask yourself, what were the things that worked for me in this year? What were the things I was able to do? What were the things I was able to achieve? What were the goals I set out to do? Did I accomplish them? What were the things that worked? That is you telling yourself the truth. Then you also need to ask yourself, what are the things that did not work? You need to be honest with yourself. What are the things that didn't work? Yes, you tried, but it didn't work. What are those things? You need to pay attention to those things and note them down. And also, you need to tell yourself, what are the things that would need to rework? They didn't work, I need to rework on them. What are those things also? What are those things that you need to rework? It's all part of you telling yourself the truth. You can't say everything you set out to do in the year you accomplished or no. That's you not telling yourself the truth. There's a relationship that you lost in the year. What happened? How did you lose them? Tell yourself the truth. What worked? What did not work? What are the things you need to rework? This is how you tell yourself the truth, so you can get yourself ready for the coming year. I always say this all the time. The new year has nothing of itself to make anything new. If things are to become new and dreams become real, it's entirely up to you. It's entirely up to you. But the question is, what are the things that worked for you in the year? What are those things you did that you saw significant results? What are the things that worked for you? What are the things that did not work for you? Yes, you did try, but it didn't work. And it's okay, right? I tell people all the time, you do not actually lose. It's either you win or you learn. You don't actually lose. Whatever may look like a loss to you is actually a learning experience. So you actually don't lose. You either win or you learn. So what are the things that didn't work? The opportunities for you to learn. And you only see the things that did not work when you tell yourself the truth. When you're lying to yourself, the things that didn't work, you want to assume and pretend like they worked. They didn't work. Accept it. Accept it. It didn't work. Accept it. And then you need to tell yourself, what are the things that I need to rework? What do I need to rework? What do I need to work on? What do I need to fix? What do I need to rework? So as I get into the new year, I know the things that I need to do better this time. See, guys, it's all about telling yourself the truth. Nobody has to put a gun to your head. No, nobody has to put you under duress. Sit yourself down and tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the brutal, honest truth. It's going to be brutal. And I tell people all the time, honesty, truth hurts. Yes, truth hurts. The truth hurts. If it doesn't hurt, it is not the truth. The truth hurts. That's why people avoid the truth and rather comfort themselves with a lie. The truth many times is not comforting. It hurts. The truth hurts. But hurts heal. Yes, the truth hurts, but hurts heal. Hurts heal. So you need to tell yourself the truth. You need to tell yourself the truth. And I've told us how to do this. Be honest, accept, and make the changes. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. And you need to tell yourself, what are the things that worked? What are the things that did not work? What are the things that you need to rework? Another thing that you need to also pay attention to, or you may need to even make use of, is what I call the KISS format or the KISS model. The KISS model is KISS. And now this is not about keep it simple, short. No. Keep it simple and short. No, that's not it. But KISS model is a model you can use to tell yourself the truth. Now, how does this model work? It's simple. You take a plain sheet of paper and you draw two lines across. So so you have four boxes. KISS. The K, what are the things that you need to keep? That's part of telling yourself the truth. A very practical way. What are the things that you need to keep? People, places, things. What are the things you need to keep? It's part of telling yourself the truth. The I, what are the things you need to improve? The S, what are the things you need to start? The other S, what are the things you need to stop? This is a practical way of tell yourself the truth. What are the things you need to keep? What are the things you need to improve? What are the things you need to start? What are the things you need to stop? This model would help you to put yourself together as you tell yourself the truth. Because at this point, you are not lying to yourself. At this point, you are not trying to impress anybody. At this point, you are brutally honest with yourself. See this, guys. This would help you as you tell yourself the truth. The KISS model. What things do you need to keep? Write them down. And you know, you're writing them down with brutal honesty. Write them down. What are the things you need to improve? Write them down. Remember, no assumption, no pretension, no denying. Write them down. What are the things you need to improve? Come to the other area. What are the things you need to start? You couldn't do before now. What are the things you need to start? And then what are the things that you need to stop? What are the things that you need to stop? Very important. This is how you get yourself prepared for a new season, because you've told yourself the truth in this current season. See, guys, it makes no sense that you lie to yourself. It makes no sense. It makes no sense that you lie to yourself. It's even worse when you lie to others, and it's much worse when you lie to yourself. Because when you lie to yourself, you'll not be able to fix anything about yourself. Look at the story of the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15. From verse 17, scripture says, and he came to his senses. That's why he started to tell himself the truth. And that's where the story began to change for him. Like I told you earlier, if you want to see any change in your life, it starts from when you tell yourself the truth. You don't tell yourself the truth, you will never see anything change in your life. Then you'll be living in assumption. Then you'll be living in denial. Then you'll be living in pretense. And that's not the way for anyone to live. You made a mistake, no doubt. We all make mistakes. But you can only learn to accept your mistake when you eventually begin to tell yourself the truth. Guys, this is it. This is it. And this is what you are going to do in Feliz Navidad and all of those things, season's greetings and all of those things. But sit yourself down, take out a few hours in your day, and practice what I've just shared with you now. The KISS model. Tell yourself the truth. What are the things that you need to keep? What are the things you need to improve? What are the things you need to start? What are the things you need to stop? You must tell yourself the truth. You must tell yourself the truth. You know, in the formal anthem of Nigeria, one of the lines in the stanza says, help our youth the truth to know. is wanting to know the truth. Is another thing to tell yourself the truth that you know. People know the truth that yes, things didn't work out for them the way they expected. They had some losses, they had some difficulties. They know that truth, but they are yet to tell themselves the truth, how those things that happened really affected them. They are still pretending as though all is well. You know, this was the difference between King Saul and King David. Saul knew that God was angry with him through the message that God sent him through Prophet Samuel. God was angry. Saul knew, but Saul would rather pretend and behave as though all is well. But then, when Prophet Nathan came with the message to King David for the wrong he did by killing Uriah and marrying Bathsheba, David told himself the truth that he had sinned against God and he repented. In fact, Saul's case was even worse because Prophet Samuel had told him that God had intended to establish your throne forever. That was King Saul. So if King Saul had told himself the truth, there would have never been a need for David. See, you have no idea the things you will lose in your life simply because you refuse to tell yourself the truth. You have no idea. You have no idea the things you will lose in your life simply because you refuse to tell yourself the truth. So of what use is it for all of those losses simply because you just don't want to tell yourself the truth? Guys, a word that says enough for the wise. So let me take your questions if you have any questions. So guys, let's take a few questions before we call this a wrap for today. If you have any questions, feel free to send in your questions so we can take them. If you have any questions whatsoever, drop in your questions so we can take them and then we'll call this a wrap. I believe you've learned something here today. I believe you go back and practice the KISS model as you plan for your new year and as you review your year 2024. You can look at all the things that you have done this year and apply the KISS model. What things do you need to keep? What things do you need to improve? What things do you need to start? And what things do you need to stop? You need to put yourself in that model so you can prepare for the coming year. Because the truth is, it makes no sense you lying to yourself. You need to tell yourself the truth. You need to tell yourself the truth. It's of no use to lie to yourself. Right? It's of no use to lie to yourself. You need to tell yourself the truth. So, guys, let's take a few questions before we call this a wrap for today. Thank you so much for that. It's of no use to lie to yourself. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, keep, improve, start, stop. Yep, that's the KISS model. That's the KISS model you use when you tell yourself the truth. You keep, you improve, you start, you stop. Very important. So, guys, let's take a few questions. If there are no questions, that's fine. That means you're going back now to go and x-ray your life using the KISS model as you plan for the coming year. And should, in case you have questions when the live is over, feel free to drop in the comments and we will take the questions, reply the comments to answer your question, right? So, guys, this is what we'll call it a wrap for today. We want to appreciate all of you for being here. I want to say a very Merry Christmas to you and yours, and we wish you all the best in this season of celebration. Like I said earlier today, the best gift you can give anyone are not things. The best gift you can give anyone is the gift of you. And the best of you is only seen when you tell yourself the truth. Once again, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. Do have a wonderful, wonderful Yuletide celebration. Like we always say, there's always more on the upgrade side of life. And that's why we encourage you to leave good behind so that you can upgrade. And what better way for you to upgrade than to tell yourself the truth? Thank you so much for watching, and God bless you.